And as you can see, we've taken that same brand new, beautiful user interface that we developed last season for the basketball games, and we've built Pro Football 2021 to fit it. We've got the new menu layout here with, this was inspired by Brooks to move the team information down here this year. We've got our user information at the top still. A work in process. Everything you see tonight, there's things that can and will change before we get to the final product, and especially based on your feedback. So as we go along here, don't be shy about throwing questions into the chat box, and anything that pertains to the game. We have Brooks and Asker both on the line here, so they will be happy to answer things. Before we kind of have any questions, since there's nothing yet in the chat box, I want to take a second to thank a huge thanks to Rizzo23 and Glenmere14. Both of those guys have subscribed to our channel. We certainly appreciate everybody who follows us and has the notifications turned on, so that when we go live, you get the notice and you can jump in. But those are our first 2 subscribers to our channel, so we thank you very, very much for supporting us. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can get a subscription for free to Twitch Prime, and that gives you a free subscription to use to a Twitch channel. So if you use that on our channel, that supports us, and we hugely, hugely appreciate that and all of your support. So let's get going here. We'll take a look around some of the league. We've loaded up a league here, and the dashboard page is one of my favorite new improvements that I've seen so far, giving you a visual graphic here of your player leaders, your key stats and where you're ranking, your schedule, which has the links to the box scores, as you can see, and the box scores also have links to player cards. Again, everything you're seeing here is a work in progress. We're building things. There's things that need to be formatted, colors, all that kind of stuff. This is very much development stage still, but we really wanted to give you the opportunity to see what's going on here. So we have a question from in the chat box: has player tags overriding been fixed? Guys, any comments on that one?
It hasn't been fixed yet, but we will fix it for 21, definitely.
Okay, Dermot. Yeah, Dermot was here on Tuesday night. Really excited about the football game then, and you can see this is a brand. I mean, it's brand new. This is nothing like you've seen before from the text. I don't even like calling our games text sims anymore, because we're doing so much with the graphics and the interface and the AU platform that Sean Sullivan built and helped us apply the games to last year and this year, has made a huge improvement in the game, and it's going to feel so smooth, so slick, and you're going to feel like it's a totally new experience. Question about the contract side of the game. Anything's changed there? I know Brooks, you want to chime in on that, or question about edited coaching staffs?
For contracts, we haven't gotten to that point where we're reevaluating those yet. Well, obviously everything that was in the PF20 version of the game will still be there. The question as to whether or not we expand on contracts or change some of the settings, those are all on the table. We certainly want to make it more realistic, and we want to make sure that it's meeting the needs of the players. But we'll have to go back to our forum and kind of check to see what parts of contracts people are looking to update, and see where we go from there. As of today, that we haven't made any of those changes, since we're focusing mostly on the UI, but we will make time to gather feedback on the contract section for sure. Editing coaches is already in the game. There are some parts of the coach editing that got left out in 20, and there are some differences between the pro game and the college game. So we will definitely look at tweaking all of those to make them a little bit more editable, so that all the fields will be changeable, and all of the various traits and things. We've also looked at doing some things with displaying the coach playbooks, so you can kind of see what playbook a coach is actually going to be running. And we'll look at updating that to make them a little more varied. So that should help on the coaching front.
That's something that I'm really excited to hear about with the changes, to being able to get more engrossed in what each coach can do, what you're what's going on. I mean, there's so much detail in the strategy part of Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2021 that the more is better, and the deeper we go is better, and that's a great feedback that we can get from our customers on what they want to see with it. And you're looking at the new updated staff screen. You can see it takes a page out of the pro basketball playbook, where you're going to have visual representations for the coaches' reputations and their overall ratings, and be able to roll over their images and find the buttons that way, with opportunities to fire, negotiate, promote, and check out their profile when it's built in. Question. That's a good question for people who are new to the game, from 19 Kalel 89. What does that reputation do exactly?
Yeah, I can speak a bit to that. So basically, the reputation is how famous and accomplished a coach is. So it doesn't do a lot, except that it is part of what determines how much money he wants. So if you've got a coach with a very good reputation that's won several Super Bowls, he's going to command a lot of cash to sign. The other thing that reputation does is that it works as a filter for coach retirement. So because it's a sort of a proxy for their accomplishments. So coaches with very low reputation, they will retire easily if they're unemployed, right? So we use reputation to sort of weed out all the unemployed coaches that people presumably don't want because they've never won anything.
Okay, that's a good answer on reputation for people who are new to the game or new to the stream and just seeing the game for the first time. I also threw in the chat box there that if you haven't had a chance to play the game, you can get the game. It's already been reduced from its original price. You can get it for 50% off that price with coupon code SUMMER in our web store right now through the end of the month. So you could get in and play around with Pro Football 20, get used to the game, and kind of get some ideas for maybe things you'd like to provide feedback-wise as we finish up development here. We've got
speaking on the reputation aspect, it brings up a good point, where one of the goals for this new UI refresh is to add a lot more help text and little icon pop-ups and things like that, so that rather than having to go find an outdated manual or search a forum to figure out what these different things are, we're going to look to add a lot more help text that's immediately available. It'll help new players figure out what these things are, and for the ones that are a little bit more confusing, it'll help even experienced players learn all the different terms and behaviors of some of these fields that you see on the screen.
So one question here that came up as we scrolled up about talking about playbook UI, and Brooks alluded to something earlier with the coaches. And I'll bring up the strategy screen here. Is there anything that you guys want to talk about in this area right
now? This part is another one of those that we're still evaluating. Like I said before, we do want to set it up where you can view the actual playbooks of the coaches. The UI will refresh a little bit so that it's a little easier to use. we have a lot more space to work with on the screen. So you can see on that screen when you click on the coach, you can actually see what their current playbook is comprised of. As far as gameplay enhancements related to this, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of things on our list. We've captured a lot of stuff from the forum. There are lots of little tweaks we want to make to the engine to make it more realistic, to make the substitutions work better, to make third down decisions work better, the play run or the pass run decisions, we want that to work better. Go forward on fourth down, like all these things that people have been asking for improvements to. We're constantly tweaking them, and we'll continue to do so in the next version.
Yeah, and we will definitely also bring over all the additions that we made for the college game, the 2020 college game, where you could, on your defensive strategy, you could designate target players, and then for the college game, we added a bunch of new plays that had a special command. So the players with that command would latch on to the guy that you had set as target player. So you could actually sort of dynamically do double coverage by using the target player setting. And the same with the tug and run stuff that we added for the college game that will be brought over as well, obviously.
So one thing that Brooks had mentioned earlier was talking about some of the things that this new UI can do for us in terms of rollovers, pop-ups, things like that. Something that's really interesting here that he's been working on, it's still a work in process, but the ability where we can roll over something and have a pop-up come up on the screen that would be useful to you, that would prevent a mouse click if you didn't want to go to the detailed player card. Somebody had asked to see a player card. We can take a look at one as it's certainly not finished, but as a work in process here. That if you're familiar with the the interface from Pro Basketball 2020 and what we showed in 2021, we have the same kind of setup here with the player team logo, some stats up here, and the ability to go through things here. Again, it's not we have a lot of data at this point, and the player card hasn't been completely fleshed out yet, but you can get an idea of what we're looking at here. And we're not sure what this final use of the rollover will be or where it will be used, but it's just an example of something that Brooks has developed here that shows the power of what we can do now, as opposed to kind of what we were limited to before in the games.
It looks like we have a couple of questions about player and coach personalities. I know we have some things behind the scenes we're working on for players specifically to make them more immersive. I'm not quite ready to share what those are, but basically it's to add more personality to the players themselves, so that they feel a little bit more real and have needs and wants and things like that expand on what we have in the game. Coach personalities, I'm not sure where we're going to take that one just yet. I would like to expand a little bit more on the current coach settings that we already have, the coach properties, to make them a little more unique with their play calling specifically, so that you can see the different coaches are going to be more varied in the way that they handle their playbooks and things. That's one of the goals. I have a question about taking notes. I hadn't thought about being able to attach notes. In the past, we've had a watch list where you could put players, but being able to put notes on players that's certainly something we can look at. I'm not sure whether we would do it for all players or if we tie it into the draft evaluation in some form, but we can add it to our list to look at. The 2D game system, it's all still there. I'm actually pretty excited with the way that it turned out. I'm not sure if Gary has a game queued up where we can actually watch a replay, but this new system scales much better to screen size. So we're actually able to go almost full screen with the play calling interface. This is kind of in a rough form, but there is a full screen button that we'll be able to use so that the whole field goes full screen. So those of us on large monitors or 1440p monitors, 4K monitors, or whatever, will be able to see a pretty large version of this, and the picture quality seems like it's pretty good. So I'm really excited about that. I know we've had a lot of requests to make our games a little bit more responsive to large screen formats. So I think this is going to be a really nice update in the game.
That's one of my most favorite things, I think, about what AU has brought to us here is that that ability to get things in the large screen and really make it. I mean, no matter what screen size you're on, you're not. We do realize that some of the older games, if you got the 4K monitors, things got kind of tiny at times. That will no longer be an issue whatsoever. And we're taking a look, as we talked about the 2D, the option to see things in a full screen or a windowed mode. Again, certainly this will change. The look of this will change, but the functionality is in there. That's what's important. And these are kind of things that Brooks was talking about, is how we're giving you different opportunities to play, the way that you want to, and whatever works best for you, giving you different options here to go, either in the sort of in-game window mode or the full screen with the 2D. And the 2D is, from when I started working with Brooks, one of my most favorite things about this football game, because I felt you needed to see the plays play out. You needed to see things happen. You needed to understand, to be able to have a visual representation of why something happened, what happened, rather than just looking at text all day. And this is one of my most absolute favorite features of this whole franchise, is our 2D gameplay here.
All right, so SCN vet, do weight and height matter based on positions? Yes, it does. That's one of those things that we're always tweaking as we evaluate how much effect those have, but they definitely do. So Noah's asking, when you talk about making third down in-game strategy better, have you thought about giving the player options to guide these decisions? So I haven't fleshed it out fully, but that's my goal, is to give a little bit more, some more options on the play calling screens and the package screens, so that you'll be able to tweak your current lineup or your current package that's in the system based on some of those extra scenarios that we haven't caught before, specifically third down and possibly some late game kind of things. Player names on 2D, I can look at that. Right now we have the option to switch between position and jersey number. I think player name is going to be really jumbled on the screen, since it is still kind of small. The dots are small, but we can look at doing that and see how it looks. I think that gets caught up on most of the questions I see in chat.
Okay, and one thing we can show, kind of pulled up the media screen earlier, pull it up again. We've got the magazines, the in-game magazines that will be built in, before I give you guys, that extra immersion. The team has done such a great job with things like the news, things like this with the game of the week, the expert predictions. There's so much depth and detail in this game that you really need to really spend some time going through each screen and finding these nuggets here that give the game so much depth. Even, I mean, in the league media screen alone, there's 10 different options of things to choose from and to look through. and to pay attention to, including the highlights, which are always fun to go back and take a look at. But there's this sort of the game has evolved so much over the years from where it's where it started, and the team just keeps adding more and more depth each year as we go. And a lot of that is, as Brooks mentioned, driven by your suggestions and things that you've brought up in the forums, or that you've brought up in our Slack channels, or that we're here tonight to take the opportunity to interact with you guys and get some ideas and make some notes and come back again in a week or so and show you here's some improvements from things that even the last build that that we talked about. The one thing Chris talking about the play result text in the 2D mode getting lost. That's really good feedback, because as we talked about, that screen, as everything's subject to change right now, but that screen in particular is mostly just functioning at this point, so we make sure everything's working properly. That's going to be great for when we go back to look at it and design it and say, how can we make this better? How can we get more information in? And you saw with the pro basketball version where we have the use of what they call toasts, those little pop-ups that come up for a couple of seconds and give you some information. Things like that could absolutely be used there, and in a number of other places in the game. So we have so many more tools at our disposal now that really, everything you guys can think of, we can at least look into and talk about internally and see, does this make the game better? Does this fit with the decision, the overall design philosophies of the game? But there's so many little tools, the pop-ups, the toast, the manual bars and things like that really are going to bring the game to a whole new level for you guys.
I see there's another question from Noah about exporting stats in online leagues if you are not the commissioner. That one's a little bit tricky, because having participated in a lot of online leagues in various sports for decades now, I'm not sure that that's something that we would do. I think the commissioners themselves could certainly export it and share it with the league if they want, but the exports can have a lot of player editable data. So things like your draft classes and specific other exports like that, we don't want to expose unless you're the commissioner and you're doing some editing that you need to do, because we don't want anybody in the league to be able to get to all of that data if they're not meant to see it. But there's certainly some updates that we can make to that. There's some exporting we could probably do from individual screens, so that you're just exporting data that you can already see on the screen. We could look at doing some of those kinds of things, but the actual options setting screen export is that's meant for the power users and the folks that are doing more data editing.
I want to say a quick, huge thank you to Mark Pryor. 22 Mark has been from the beginning with us at Wolverine Studio. So thank you for your subscription here to our channel and supporting us. One thing that I was kind of clicking through here on the screen that I'm excited personally about is this new use of the team drop down here, which will allow you more seamlessly to transition between teams and what you're looking at. That was always one thing for me that I'm used to in the pro basketball games, just being able to change the team name and not have to go back to any sort of initial screen. Same thing has been built in here, with Brooks this year, being able to just change the team that you want to see and get the information updated. As long as it's something that you're supposed to be able to see, there'll still be things. If you're not supposed to be seeing that thing from that team, you won't have access to it. and you'll get kicked back to the dashboard. But otherwise, it's so much easier just to navigate, around the leagues with the teams. You can take a look at the team info screen here. Obviously, still working here, but you can see all the things that can be updated very easily. The different logos, the end zone, the jersey, everything that makes the game so great, and with all the options to edit and customize and make it anything that you want it to be. And that's I think a huge advantage for our game, is that there is so much customization, and the community does a great job in stepping up to help with rosters and logos and all that, all that kind of stuff that just really brings the game to an incredible level. And if you're out there and if you're interested in helping with that sort of thing, and you want to know how to get involved, shoot me an email, a text, or DM on Twitter or through the forums if you want to be involved in that sort of thing. We're always interested in having people help out with that. Let's see. There's a question from Norlands about future. Can we separate number of teams, length of season, along with selecting playoff formats in the future? 72-team league needs some love. I guess I'll leave that one to Brooks.
Oh, you don't want to take this one? The scheduling and the league formats have been a pain in my side for years now, and I wish there was a better way of figuring out how to do all of that scheduling. I have some ideas on how to make it a whole lot better, how to make it a little bit more configurable for folks. That includes being able to change your desired playoff format. I think we have 3 playoff formats in the game now for the various formats. We could look at expanding that if what I'm able to do is done in time for release. But all of that needs work. We'd like to make it a little bit more configurable. We'd like to make it a little more customizable. We'd like the scheduling to work a little bit better for those custom leagues, and we definitely would like to be able to maybe not fully customize playoffs, because it can get tricky with the way we represent things in the UI, but we definitely need to make them switchable between the different formats that are there. So it's on the list. I can't promise it's going to make it into 21, because I kind of always said if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right, and I just may run out of time, but we'll see if we can get to it. What I would also like to do is port over the custom league format and custom scheduling system from the college game, which basically allows people to create their own on runtime, as opposed to having to mod the team's XML file. So anybody who's played around with that file knows that it can be unwieldy, but for folks who know how to do it, or for people who are willing to do it for the community, it is a way to do a completely custom format that's even outside the team formats or the league formats that are in the game today. So again, it's on the list. I mean, the longer our list gets, the harder it is to get to everything, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, and suggestions like that, I know about the scheduling issues from the basketball games, and the requests for for some really detailed levels of customization. Scheduling is incredibly difficult to work out, for a myriad of reasons in all of these games. But even by bringing it up and giving us an opportunity to discuss it and talk about it and think about it, it's something that may not happen now, but if we're aware of it, we're aware of the requests for it. It's something that sticks with us, and we think about in our future designs and future development ideas. So there's a lot of suggestions. Obviously, we can only put so many things in, but just because we didn't put it in, as long as we saw it, we at least can think about it, and it's kind of in the book. It's something that we can go back to later on, or as we're doing things, we can design things to think about, not just in terms of scheduling or custom leagues, but really anything, any suggestions you have that we can always be designing and say, okay, that guy had an idea. We can't get there yet, but we can start laying the groundwork in this version, and maybe in the future, it'll be an opportunity to do those sort of things.
I've got a question from 19 Kalel 89. The camp results on the players being aggregated. It's something we can look at. I hadn't really thought of it in a while, so we can certainly add that to the list. We have a lot more real estate now. I'm sure you guys are seeing this in the UI, but since we've expanded the UI to take the full window instead of having the little individual panes with the main pane in the window in the middle, now we have the full real estate to do things with. So since we have a little bit more room, we could add a little bit more data to the screens, or do some things with pop-ups and modals or tooltips where we can show a little bit more details on what specifically is going into some of these numbers. That may be one of those things that works going forward. It might not work with, like, if you go back and look at an existing league file that you've been running for 5 years or whatever, 5 seasons, it might not work on past data, but we can look at expanding that going forward. The awards, changing that display to be 3-time Pro Bowler as opposed to breaking them out. That's something that we can look at. I don't see a huge problem with that. I'll defer to Gary when we get to updating the UI and some of those portions to make sure we can fit it all in and make it look decent. He's usually got good ideas on that front. And we'll fix the issue with the Super Bowl not showing up as an award. That seems like something that should be there. The league-wide player stat screen is on the screen now. Gary is showing. Yeah.
In relation to the camp results, you actually get an email that says where they gained, and I'm not sure if we're going to log it like on the individual stats, but you can always refer back to the email where it will say in parentheses after each player where they increased.
Yeah, you can also kind of see it on the. We don't have the ratings progression graph in the current beta version right now, but it will be there where you can kind of look at the chart to see the gains and losses over different seasons. So that will be there eventually. So that's another way to go back and look to see what they're gaining in and how it's working.
Yeah, I know the point about the player improvement in emails, that was brought up at the last stream. People wanted to see that sort of thing in basketball, and one of the biggest, I think, advantages of having the football games now on the same platform as the basketball games is that we can share so many things back and forth, and it's so easy to share things that either look a certain way or behave in a certain way. So if there's things that you see in one of the games, we can absolutely try to work towards putting it in, that sort of thing in the other franchise, from basketball to football, football to basketball. And, so really, you get more familiar with both sets of the games will feel more familiar to you. You'll be able to, if you haven't played basketball before, you'll be able to jump in there and say, okay, I know where all the new stuff is. I know where, how to find player cards. I know how to sim. Everything, it feels pretty familiar. Same way for the basketball fans who can go into football here, and they'll know where things are. They'll have the same expectations, in most ways of getting to find information, or how information works, or what kind of information you get. So absolutely, if you see something in one game that you want to bring up and talk about with the other game, throw it out there, and we'll make it a kind of a note of it again as we're doing the development, that they really like this feature in football. I want to bring this over to basketball. How can I make it work? And thank you, Pure Simmer. We just have another subscriber to our channel that is absolutely fantastic. We're so happy to see that, and thank you for the support. And there's a couple questions there, guys. I'll let you kind of run down them and respond to those guys.
Yeah, changes to the draft. I don't have anything on my list currently. It could be something we need to go back through the forum and talk to the community about what kind of changes we need to make there. Possibly we could look at we kind of went back and forth on some of the max position counts and how many at each position the CPU will draft before it abandons folks, and that kind of lends itself into the free agent signing as well. So we might look at some of that, scouting points and things. We'd have to look at that again if there needs to be improvements there. I don't have a lot of notes on that at the moment. William being a common first name, there's a names text file that I want to say I pulled from U.S. Census data probably 10 years ago, and it very well could have just had WM in there way too many times. It's something that we can look at pulling out now that we're aware of it. I honestly hadn't even noticed that. And max age for retirement. That one is there's no hard cap in the game to retire at 40. I know certain positions it does let them stick around a little bit longer. QBs and kickers and things that I know historically have been much older players, whereas obviously running backs and things usually retire a lot earlier. So it's certainly it's something that we can look at. We'll have to again take a look at the forums and things and see how many other folks are reporting that kind of thing, and see if there's some tweaks that we need to look at. I'll certainly add it to the list to remind me to check.
In terms of, I see Norland's wanted to mention that in terms of Pro Basketball 2021. We can talk about that for a second. There is, again, the same thing. There's no set retirement age. The players just their skills decrease over time. Obviously, it's different than in football where it's not so positional. But eventually, their skills just diminish to the point where teams don't want to sign them. And then if they're sitting around the league not being signed as a 40-year-old, they just decide it's time to hang it up, obviously. And they just disappear out of the player file after that point.
Regarding injuries, there's already really significant injuries for 16 weeks or something like that, which is basically season ending. We could, of course, put in another level that just sets season ending on beyond that. That's a possibility. In terms of career-ending injuries, it's something that's been requested on the forum as well occasionally. It could be there, but it also, it's also sort of game ruining. So for some people, so if you have built your team around something and you're super excited about it, then suddenly just one guy just goes off and dies in a car crash or something. That can sort of ruin the experience. So if we ever put in career-ending injuries, I think we would probably also put in an option to turn them off. But it's not something that's on the table right now, at least unless Brooke has thought about it.
Yeah, I can certainly add it to the list for those guys who want a little bit more immersion or want the possibility of those things. So I'll add that to the list. There's another question about the 2D seeing the touchdown score apply before the touchdown play. Has that been fixed? I want to say we've gone back and forth and tried to fix it a couple times in the various games. I'm not sure whether it's the pro game or the college game where it's fixed, and which one still might have some scenarios where it's not. it's definitely something that we'll make sure is right before we push out PF21. It also, because it affects the highlight screen, and it affects lots of the show score functionality and the hide score functionality and all that kind of stuff. So it's all related, and we'll double check it. Exporting team play analysis. This is another one of those exporting questions that, because I have a kind of a commissioner background, I've always tried to make the game show analysis that I felt was fair and balanced and realistic. I get concerned when we export too much data that the Excel experts that are out there and the machine learning experts and whatnot will export all of this data and then just crunch the numbers to such a point where they can overwhelm the AI in the game. And so we've had a tendency to not export things that we thought might be used in that way. And it's unfortunate because there's certain cases where you want to be able to see that data and you want to play with it. And I mean, maybe for sandbox mode, we can look at exporting a little bit more of that data, but then you have folks that will load up leagues in sandbox mode and just crunch and crunch and crunch thousands and thousands of plays and run it through their analysis engines and then use that to go into online leagues and beat everybody. So we have to be really careful about how much data we provide, because we certainly don't want people taking advantage of that data and then ruining the game for online leagues or whatever. If it was just their own game, I guess I really wouldn't have a problem with it. But because we do have a fair amount of our user base that likes to play in multiplayer, we have to be cautious about that.
And as you can see, I simmed a week while we were talking here. You can see how fast the sim engine is here with Brooks. It's a click of a button and it's a second or two and the whole week is simmed. So, to Brooks's point there, it would not be hard to just get a ton of data very quickly with how advanced and how tight the sim engine is. That you can just click a button and boom, there you go. The whole week is done. Just while we're talking there.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, you can sim full seasons. You can actually set it up to sim multiple seasons. So we have guys that have gone out and simmed 30 seasons in 15 or 20 minutes, and then there's all your data that you could possibly want. So we use that a lot of times to test our engine to make sure that the results are aligned with the current pro game norms and things like that. So like I said, it's something I'd love to be able to just give everybody all the data and let them just go have at it. But I have to be a little bit cautious of people who are taking advantage of that. So
yeah, I think it was a bigger problem earlier, but I think we can probably open it up maybe a little more, because now there are so many plays in the game that I know that from when I've been testing, and I just want to test like new features, and I have to simulate like 2 million snaps or something like that to get good statistics. So I don't remember the exact combinatorics numbers, but there's something like 5,000-6,000 offensive versus defensive plays now, something like that, 10,000 maybe. So if people wanted to crush numbers on that, it's even with the exports, it would take a lot of time. But it's definitely an issue that we need to be cautious about, because some of these multiplayer leagues are very competitive and people get very agitated. But yeah, but I think soonish maybe.
Yep, and that's something that we always kind of take into our design, philosophies and design strategies for the games, is giving the right balance for the players who are interested only. Some people are only interested in the solo play experience. Others, especially football lends itself so well to multiplayer leagues, and there's been such a strong history of the football leagues, and we really appreciate all the things that they do, to talk about the games, especially with their innovative websites and what they do on social media. Um, there's ways that we can, I think, add things that can be used for media and immersion in all of our games, and especially if we can help you kind of do more with your leagues and make them even better experiences while still not exposing too much of what goes on, or giving people an opportunity to have an unfair advantage in the multiplayer leagues.
Yeah, one of the goals that Asger and I had a while back is that regardless of what kind of system you run or what kind of data you have available to you, that there's always a defense that can counter it. And if you have people who are loaded up on one way of running their defense and one way of setting up their roster, that there's an offense that can beat it if people are willing to do the research and be able to set that up and game plan against your opponent. So I know those aspects have been a focus, and we put a lot of effort into that to make it where you can be competitive regardless of whether somebody's done a lot of research or whether you just want to use the AI to run your team. But it is something that we're constantly updating and making more bulletproof, so that it makes it a little easier for us to unlock some of the, there is a little bit more play analysis in PF20 than there has been in the past. So we have been adding to it gradually over time as we feel confident that people can't use that data against all the other players. And obviously with tweaking some of the substitutions and some of the coaching styles and making sure the coach playbooks are set up in a realistic way, that should further that effort and make it where we could look at exporting some of this data, at least maybe make it a commissioner only kind of thing, and then we'll see how that goes. And we'll leave it open in the forums and on our Slack channel, so that if you have opinions on it, we could certainly take a look at it.
Question in the chat from Narland34 about Pro Basketball. We can do that too. If you watch the 2D game, or viewer is notified of an in-game injury, yep, there is notification in the play-by-play that a player has been injured, and you would see it as you go back to the substitution page and see his energy level down to nothing or very low, depending on how severe the injury is. We also have, as we talked about earlier, the opportunity now with these in the the platform called AU that we use, that was developed by Sean for us, to use pop-ups and toasts and all sorts of other kind of information. So if there's a particular way that you like to see data displayed, or something you've seen in watching a TV game or whatever, anything that you're like, oh, that was cool, we can do that sort of thing. Just give us some feedback on what you like to see or how you would like to see it, and we'll absolutely consider it. And it's really been sort of the driving force behind doing this developer Dynasty this week, both for the basketball and football games, is to get in front, show off what we're working on to everybody, but to be able to let you see it, and see it for more than like 30 seconds in a clip, or a short video or a screenshot, and let you kind of see things, see how they're moving along, see how they're working, and be able to look at it and talk to us and think about, hey, I would like to see something different on the screen. If you could do, you can give me a little bit more data, or like we talked about on that search screen earlier. I'll bring that up again real quick, where Brooks developed, this rollover here that we can use not only just for this, whether we end up using this or not, I guess we'll see, but it can be used in multiple, areas of the games. So as you see things that we're doing, you can kind of get ideas like, I want to see this, certain thing happen on a particular screen. Can you make that happen? And this gives you an opportunity to get those ideas out there and talk to us about the games. Brooks, there's a question if changes have been made to the 2D view of offense and defense sets. Jumbo does not have an image in 20.
Yeah, some of our formations between the pro game and the college game, as we were shuffling them back and forth, some got renamed, some images got lost, and there's a mismatch of some of those formation images so that people can see the play diagram. So we'll definitely look at updating that. I'd be curious from the guys who are hanging around in chat, does the wishbone from the college game make sense to be in the pro game? I'm okay with adding it. I don't particularly have a problem with it. Does it need to be something that everybody can enable, or should it be something that a commissioner could turn on or off? Because the wishbone is not particularly something I've seen in the NFL recently, but it's certainly something that we can look at. I know somebody on the forum or on Slack channel was asking about run pass options as well, which is definitely something that we can look at. I don't know whether we would do it, via a play in the game, or whether we would look at RPO as being a modifier of a play. But it's certainly something that we can look at.
And that's I think that throwing that out there here, Brooks, is a great use of this forum, because not only can we take suggestions from you guys tuning into the stream or watching us later on YouTube or any other channels that are watching the stream later on. We can ask you questions. Something that we're thinking about. Just like this question with the wishbone. Do you want to see this with the RPO? Things like that. That we can get immediate feedback on on certain areas and see how much interest there is in something. So that's a big thing going forward with these developer dynasties is not only tuning in to support us and support the channel, but getting the opportunity to have your say in how things come together here, and also talk to us about what we're thinking about certain things. So definitely keep that in mind as we have more of these, trying to do one for each game every week or something like that as we lead into each game's release. That think about specific things like that. How would you feel if the wishbone was in? Do you want it to be an option? Is it something that you would like to be able to ignore if you didn't like it, but it'd be fine for other leagues? Anything like that we can throw out there to the community and get some feedback on from you guys.
Yeah, I want to ask so to you guys who are listening, what if you had to pick one formation that you wanted in the game? I saw a guy was asking for pistol the other day on the forum. So what formation are we missing the most? Hit us.
Yeah, and by formations, we in the engine of the game, the formations are really more tied to packages and the personnel that you put on the field. The formations aren't necessarily tied to position, your XY coordinates or whatever on the field themselves. It's more just the depth chart. So we've tried not to put too many formations in, because a lot of the formations actually use the same depth chart. It's just, if you're changing a formation just because you want to move players around on the field, we might be able to attack that in a different way and make the formation be the same, but have variations on the formation to move players where you want them, as opposed to having to fill out yet another depth chart for a particular formation. So that's why some formations we've been resistant on adding, because it just seems like more work for the player if you'd have to fill out 30 different depth charts, because you got 30 different formations to deal with, when they're really all, or most of them, are variations of a I formation or whatever. So we can certainly discuss this further. It's something that we're constantly looking at, and we welcome the discussion. There was a comment in here about our run pass modifier and play actions. So play action is in. It was in college, and we'll port it over so that you can actually, when you create a play, you'll be able to mark it as play action. It does give you some some bonuses if you're able to fool the defense to your passing game, and it gives you some negatives if you don't fool the defense. So that is something. So the play action will be there. The RPO is something that would be different, right? That would be where we want to make the quarterback smarter, where you're not calling a run or a pass, you're actually calling a run pass option specifically, so that if the quarterback passes its intelligence check or whatever, we'd be able to have it automatically change the play to a run or a pass. It's a lot more complicated with the way the engine's set up today, so I can't say that would be in for sure, but it's definitely an intriguing thing, since I know there's a lot of current pro teams that take advantage of it. I think it'd be interesting to be able to put in the game.
It'd be interesting also to be able to use that in the college game, so that I could recreate Michigan's failures last year using it with Shea Patterson.
I didn't want to bring it up. You brought it up on your own.
Well, I think that's what happens when you start the wrong quarterback all season long. But that's a discussion for another day. We've gone an hour here, and there's still some questions that are coming in that we can we'll take them down and get to maybe get some comments on in the future. But we want to wrap it up so we keep it timely here. I want to thank Brooks and Asger for taking time, especially in the different time zones, to join us and be part of this tonight. Thank you so much for everybody who's joined in. We had a really good crowd here, and a lot of the crowd has stayed for the entire duration of the stream, which is really impressive. We're really excited about kind of using Twitch in this fashion to bring you what we're working on and let you see the game as it gets built. And the biggest factor being able to take your feedback as you see things. You can go back now. You've seen an hour's worth of screens and things like that. You can go back now over the next week and kind of review the stream and look and think about all the things you saw and how you ideas for things you would want added or changed or things like that you can you can provide to us next week as we talk about, and we can show you the things that we've worked on, and we'll show you this as it gets closer and closer to the home stretch, as we're excited to get this in your hands as soon as possible and let you have the opportunity to play this amazing football game for yourself. You can definitely tell by looking at it and by things Brooks and Asger have said how much work has gone into this version. It's not just the UI. The UI has been a lot of work, but it's opened up so many opportunities of new things to add, new things to do, new ways to display that data and information. And there's a bunch of other things under the hood, behind the scenes, tiny tweaks that can really make an impact in the game. That you've gotten a couple of them tonight in the discussion here, but there's certainly more to come, more surprises, more things that are being worked on, and we'll be able to unveil in the coming weeks as we get closer to being able to get into our first access program. Where you'll be able to pre-order the game and get your hands on the beta yourself and start playing, and just you're gonna love it. I absolutely tell you, if you like football, if you like what we've done in the past, this is an amazing new experience, and it's really going to blow you away. So thank you everybody for joining tonight. Thank you for our 2 new subscribers that we got during this chat to the channel, Mark Pryor 22 and Pure Simmer. That's amazing support, and everybody for showing up tonight and showing up for all this time. We really appreciate the support. We will be back on Tuesday at 7:30 with another Developer Dynasty number 2 for Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 2021. So I hope you join us then. And if you're just here for the football, we'll see you next week then for another look at Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2021 as we continue our Developer Dynasty segment. Thank you everybody for joining us, and have a great weekend.